ago, I had built a business at IDEO, was kind of getting bored with it, went to my CEO and CFO and said, hey, we've got all this stuff, like little bits and pieces of things around the company that seems really interesting. We're not paying attention to it. Give it to me, let me build a business. I'll give it a really clever name, system at scale, watch, everybody will come. And so we basically took like K-12 education, higher education, organizational design, government, public sector, and social innovation work. Basically anything that was sort of seen as kind of, I would say, the leftovers at IDEO. And kind of put it together, got a few people together and said, this is the business we're building. And we thought, just wait until people kind of like beat the doors down on this. And this was our business strategy in the first year, because I have to say, nothing happened. It was crickets. Like, we actually had people coming, but nobody was willing to pay for anything. Nobody was interested in like actually like understanding how design worked with it. And so my CFO loves dogs. This is my dog. And so what I would do every time I would go and report financials with him, which was monthly, is I would bring my dog in, and he'd like sit with the dog on his lap, and he'd be like, she's so adorable. And I'd like, great, so I lost more money for us, and like fine, and you know, pet the dog, and that was basically, it got me through the first year pretty well. And so for those of you who need kind of clever strategy, I thought I was kind of figure it out. Then something happened. We started to see really interesting clients coming to us that basically nobody knew where to put them. So if you're trying to rethink a newspaper, like Gannett was trying to rethink, how do you actually rethink that? Because frankly, it's not just a design project, it's an entirely organizational design project. It's about entirely shifting the culture around the ways that those people who work in the newspaper industry have worked on for years. And frankly, you have to also counsel people who are actually watching their careers die and actually get them to a place, an emotional place where they can work differently. If you're trying to think about federal judges who basically, literally the most kind of closeted people, like they never leave their courtrooms ever. And they don't look like this, but just like this, like close enough to like this. And you show them YouTube and they're like, whoa, you know, they're like totally shocked about it. We're trying to convince them that in fact the judiciary may shift based on technology shifts that we're seeing happening today. They will fight you. So how do you actually do that? How do you actually counsel the judiciary system on how they might change? To actually government, and a lot of our work actually recently has been with government, US governments and other governments, kind of focusing on how to kind of use design and innovation to rethink the way government happens. I put this slide in because we're doing a lot of work with the US, but actually a lot of work in Singapore and China. I was actually recently out in Greece meeting with the Prime Minister of Greece, and the reason I put this story in is that we were having dinner. He was like, I want to show you something really authentically, you know, Athenian. So we'll go out to dinner, which is dumb because he had to clear the entire restaurant for security purposes. So we're sitting in this empty taverna, and he's there, and we're talking about, he wanted to do a project on reinventing democracy and how Greece could become the home of reinventing democracy. And the whole time people are bringing him his phone, because it keeps ringing him, and he's like, I don't want to talk, I don't want to talk. And he's like, they bring him the phone back, he's like, I don't want to talk. My family was like, you know, you're the Prime Minister, you should totally answer the call, I'm sure it's important. And he's like, it's Mubarak. He's trying to figure out where to go, because it was actually right while the Egypt thing was happening. He's like, I don't want to deal with it right now. So I just thought that was really, really fun. So interestingly, today, 3.5 years later, our work is about 25% of the company. We're actually the largest practice in the company. And I think that's actually emblematic of a shift that we're seeing around the ways and edges and places that design can actually play a part. And so I talk about this kind of little talk I'm doing called Designing for Scale. And the way I think of it is it's about living on the edge. There's not a single day we don't come to work terrified. There's not a single day that I don't sit down with someone like the Prime Minister of Greece and be like, why the hell am I here? Why would a designer be talking to this person? And so what I thought I'd do is kind of talk about some of the things we've seen, some of the things we've learned, and some of the reasons why I think designers need to be there, and why designers are in the conversation. So 5 things we're trying, or thinking about. And the first thing, and I think you actually spoke about this in quite a bit, is that I believe there's a reason why design needs to be playing in these arenas. Partially that's because designers, when they're good, designers are really good at translating highly complicated things into highly simple and understandable things. That is a talent we have as designers. And so simplicity is a design discipline, and it's needed in the places where actually things that are, or where things are often the most complex. So this is I'm going to show you just quick, brief things from projects, not show you full projects. This is a project we've just finished with Social Security, and just to really think about the service experience for Social Security. How do you actually think about Social Security and service-centeredness, citizen-centeredness, when it may not exist in 20 years, much less depending on what happens in a couple of years. And so the whole point was how you actually kind of create the next generation of the brand and the kind of service experience. And what's interesting about something like Social Security, unlike other agencies in other parts of government, is that they can't ignore anybody. You think about the private sector, often when they're sort of saying, we want to go after this consumer, they pick a consumer that they want to engage with. Social Security doesn't get to do that. They can't pick who they actually engage with. It's got to be the entire US population. And so it was actually paralyzing for them. They could not think about a way to think about the next generation of service without thinking about the average American, and then guess what? There is no average American. There's no way to think about this. So one of the things we did is a really simple design exercise that we think about at IDEO, which is instead of segmenting America by age, race, population, other kind of demographic data, we created what we call a behavioral segmentation. It's a very simple tool that we use at IDEO all the time as a way of understanding how you might design an experience for everybody in this case. And so, I'm not going to go through them at all, like all of them, but these are the 4 primary segmentations, the 4 primary behaviors we saw when people were thinking about filing for Social Security in the US. And what was really interesting is some of them we saw with kind of other financial services projects. Some were really interesting, and we really saw a lot with Social Security. One is passengers. Often this is kind of a behavior segment where people basically have never really financially served themselves, so they actually have always relied on somebody else to help them with kind of serving, like figuring out their finances, a spouse, a partner, a child, a parent, and basically need to kind of have somebody hold their hand through the system. And these behavior segments, 4 of them, were actually so simple. Bypassers, by the way, are people who basically don't even care about applying for Social Security because they don't believe it's going to help them, so they basically opt out of the system. These segments allow the organization to understand who they were designing for and actually galvanize around the directions that they could design. And we use this as a tool to redesign the service experience. And what was really helpful is the idea that actually when you saw these segments, you could identify them. You could engage firsthand. So the biggest day for us was when the commissioner of Social Security stood up and said, I admit it, I'm a passenger, my wife's done my finances for my entire life, I wouldn't know how to file for Social Security if my life depended on it. And so the whole organization is like, this exists, we have to design for it. So simplification is a big piece of what we think we bring. However, and this actually I think this is actually at the end notes of the kind of the reviews that were going earlier today, and there was a lot of conversation about how hard it is to collaborate. And designers by nature end up being quite collaborative. We're actually quite good at collaborating with each other, and we have to collaborate with our clients. One of the things that we're actually finding now, however, is that it's not enough to collaborate with other designers or other clients. In fact, we actually have to bring networks together in new ways to take on really big challenges. With the things that we want to take on, if we only talk to people who came to us, we couldn't do the things we want to do. I'm sure you're grappling with this. So one thing we've done a lot in DC is actually kind of starting to bring together the Washington network of people who we see as innovators within different parts of different agencies within the government to kind of work together. And we just did a thing, an unconvening in DC, where we we invited everyone we worked with in Washington, and we invited all levels. So the top hierarchy is like the lowest levels, and we had a cocktail party, which, by the way, never happens in Washington. You don't bring that group together. And really, in Washington, a seat at the table means you get to sit at the table, or you don't get to sit at the table. You're sitting like 3 or 4 rows back. And we gave a talk on hierarchy and just entirely how difficult and destructive it is to innovation and design thinking. What was interesting is everyone got wasted. Everyone stayed really late, and by the end, you had the most senior people totally carousing. I don't think carousing is the right word, but totally kind of like shouting up with their youngest people and actually engaging in different ways. And so, just addressing these things head on actually make a huge difference. We found as we go forward. Building networks to solve problems is one of the things we believe we have to do now as designers. This is an example. This is IDEO. They're a Iraq, Afghanistan Veterans Association. They're a group that we work with. They've created an entirely socially networked veterans association. It's pretty amazing. Check it out. The guy who built it is brilliant, and he's terrifying to the DA because he's basically, one of the things he organizes is a ton of kind of protests against the way current veteran services are being administered. We've worked with him a lot. One of the projects we're working on right now is if you can create an entirely socially networked system, entirely technology-based, how do you create real services around it? And if you don't want to actually spend money to build veterans halls, which nobody uses anymore, how do you actually kind of like bring community together and actually provide real services? And so one of the things we've suddenly found is our private sector network is really helpful here. So we can actually go to Levi's, who basically is really thinking about pop-up community stores, and we've worked with for years and years and love. And we can go to Charles Schwab, who's thinking about and donating financial services to veterans, and we can bring those two together with IDEO and create pop-up financial services for veterans together. So that kind of networked ability actually is kind of the future of solving big problems. So if you want to solve the problems that are outside of what somebody brings to you, and bigger problems, you have to network well outside of the people who are coming to you. This is a really hard one for us, which is that one of the things we realized, we talked about deep collaboration. For us, we actually believe that increasingly we have to think of ourselves as partners with our clients, working alongside our clients with virtually as embedded as possible. We're doing a project right now, in fact this is why I'm going back and forth to Washington quite a bit, with Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I don't know if people know it. It's the first agency that's been started in the United States in 10 years. The last one was Department of Homeland Security. And if you don't know about the way agencies start in the US, they start pretty much out of crisis. You don't just start an agency every day. You start only when there's something quite significant. So Department of Homeland Security came out of 9/11 and the kind of terror threat in the US. This has come out of the financial crisis, and basically is all focused on supporting people with credit, serious credit debt, serious mortgage issues, and it's all about providing services and support to that group of people. What they wanted to do is say, we want to create a 21st century agency. So they hired us to basically come in and think of their brand, their culture, and basically how they reach out to the public. What's the new methods that they do? What are the new kinds of basically distributed technologies that they actually have to do to actually make a 21st century agency? This is like the first phase of this project is 2 years. To do this project, we have to live with the clients. This is really hard for designers because we love the idea that we get to step away, think about something, and then come back and be brilliant. And that doesn't work here. Actually, in fact, if we did that, if we stepped away, literally every week that we actually would step away, they're growing by double the size. I mean, they're actually growing so fast. Anything that we actually want to kind of think about, really like in a kind of elaborate, long-term way, actually doesn't matter because they actually have to launch by July 21st, I think. So literally, we have to be with them working constantly. And it's been amazing and fascinating and exhausting. And again, we're not going to be there for months, we're going to be there for 2 years working alongside of them. Another thing is basically the idea of if you're thinking long-term, you might choose your partners in different ways. And one of the things we actually grappled with at some point is that if we really want to think about education, sorry for all the people who are really passionate and excited about education here, we want to go to people who we thought were actually leapfrogging in education. So we, 3 years ago, went to University of Phoenix and said, we think you're doing really interesting things. By the way, we think you can do way more interesting things. We'd like to work with you and have been now for 3 years, focusing on redeveloping their platforms, reconnecting them to the Department of Education, because they don't love each other, as you can imagine, and also connecting them to a broader network of people to kind of do things. So this is actually our first try. It didn't work so well in New York of this thing that was Education Nation, like a week of experimental education kind of tests that were distributed around the city. We're coming back again to do it again this year, so stay tuned, we'll tell you more about that. But this collaboration has been incredible in terms of opening up the paths to kind of new education platforms and a lot of learning for us around how education could be built in the future. And I'll come back to that in a second. The second to last thing is thinking about design as a movement and actually how you actually spread design. And I think we were talking about this, both speakers were talking about beforehand. One way we're doing this is a system called Open IDEO, where people can come to us with a specific challenge, and we're able to open it up to IDEO's broader network and have people design. And it's been a really interesting learning. So it's an open ideation platform. But what we realized is just because you open something up doesn't mean you get good stuff. And so what we've had to do is think about how if you create an open platform, you actually get good stuff. And one of the things that we've been on the site is we created these things called DQ points, which are like called designer's quotient. And the better the solutions, the better ideas that come forward, the higher your DQ points go. And the incentive there actually is that the highest people actually, those are people we want to hire. So we often use it as a way to actually think about recruiting as we go forward. So it's been a really interesting model for us as we think about opening up design, getting people engaged, and thinking about how you incentivize design for big things. We've done a lot of open toolkits. HCD toolkit, which is we did for Gates, has kind of been a pretty popular thing. This one we just came out, and I guess this is actually why this is the counterbalance to University of Phoenix, which is that now the thing is, well, we've learned a lot about education. essentially, it's a toolkit for teachers to think about how to use design thinking as they're developing their own curriculum. It's an open source platform for people to download and engage with themselves. You can get it on our site. There's a couple sites where it's actually carried. But so one of the things we sort of think about when we're actually working with University of Phoenix, or for that matter, New School in person, is how are we borrowing from this group to think about how we're supporting other groups that actually might not get the support that they might need. Doesn't always work. I think that design and training design is a tough thing. One of the things we've actually found is, this is a project we call Ripple Effect that's been of mixed use. I mean, in some cases it was quite successful, in some cases not. What we found is, the idea was to go in and look at water distribution across India and Africa. And what we found is it worked really well when you're working with really tiny for-profit groups that basically understood that what they wanted to do was use design innovation to actually make something really desirable in their community, and there was actually a business imperative. Not so well when we're working with really tiny non-profit groups that basically didn't feel like that was the incentive that was guiding them. So it was really interesting who picked up the design thinking training and who didn't. And I think there's a lot of learnings that we're trying to build as we go forward in the future, especially thinking of non-profit work. And so the last thing I would sort of say is that we actually think, I think this actually relates to what you were saying, that we think designers now are different and have to be different. And it's actually why I'm really interested in what happens in this program. This is .org. We just launched out of the practice a thing called IDEO.org, which is a nonprofit. The idea to focus on design thinking on kind of in the nonprofit space, primarily focused on impoverished communities, mostly out of the United States. And the idea is to create internal fellows, so people from IDEO who come and live with the nonprofit for a year, and external fellows, people who basically come and work with us from the outside and learn design thinking by working on projects with us. So we opened it up. We had it open for like I think 4 weeks. We had like 400 applicants within 4 weeks, and they were complex applications. You had to do a design project to actually do it. I would say maybe a third of the people who applied were designers. Most of the people were people who come from public health, public policy, and were working in small nonprofits, and they were focusing on thinking about how they could bring that skill set into the design arena, and then vice versa, how they could actually learn design skill sets and bring that into their arena. So I think to your point, design traditionally has often been thought of as kind of an I activity. I go deep. I'm really good at graphic design. I'm really good at thinking about a certain kind of product design. At IDEO for years we've talked about T, and I think that's become a commonplace in design, which is that we go deep in one thing, but we're broadly curious and interested in a bunch of things. We know that we need to know a lot about the world, so where we want to be engaged with everything. What we're seeing in the practice now is what we're calling X-shaped people, because frankly, that doesn't work if you want to think about how you're going to play in the world of public health, because designers have to be at the table, they have to speak the language of the people at the table. So we're calling these X-shaped designers, people who are deep in a design skill, and it might be graphic design, it might be product design, it might be service design, whatever those things are, and deep in some kind of industry knowledge. It might be deep in public health, it might be deep in kind of government work, in thinking about actually how to navigate public sector or social sector. So it's often hybrid roles, again, X-shaped people, deep in two ways that we're actually really looking. And I actually think that's a little bit, I think, the hope of a program like this, is that you'd be generating what we'd be looking forward to be X-shaped designers. So anyway, this is our business strategy now. This is actually some prehistoric like Australian marmot or something like that that I actually saw. But where we actually believe that there's actually kind of no end to thinking about the ways design can evolve and evolve the world if we actually really apply it. And we're going forward pretty bravely. So that's it. Thanks.
Do I got a few pair of glasses in my head. I'm guessing they're not Fred. So
Yeah.
We decided we wanted this project for
Marmot.
Marvin, okay. Yeah, before Marvin back on Marvin. Well, Marvin, what you'll get in a minute is my obnoxious screensaver. But it's nice to see that, Fred, your business strategy has gone from a cute little puppy to like this extinct marmot, vicious marmot. It's a nice transition. The extinct part, I don't know much of it. But so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take this opportunity to do something both strategic and tactical. That is, I'm going to, I've always wanted to do this, and I've never been in the position where I know the three people well enough that I can do it. But here's what I want to do. I want to bring the three of you up, and I want you to talk to yourselves. I want you to ask each other a few questions. That's the strategic part of this, which is that I always think, I never enjoy kind of the moderator, the forced questions, whatever. I'm much more interested in what you have to say to each other, having now seen each other's work through these lenses. The tactical part of that is, at the same time, I will be stepping aside and trying to figure out where the beer is, and making sure we can get it on ice fast enough. So I will gracefully rejoin this group, and if they're stumbling, I will have a few prepared questions for them, but I don't think they will. And then shortly after that, we'll move to having some questions from all of you.